Hi, and welcome to the Scenic Route podcast. This is the show for building a successful and sustainable business on your terms. My name is Jen, and I'm a rebranding sociologist with a soft spot for rhubarb pie. Each week, I'll strive to expand your branding, business expertise, and mindset capacity. I'm so excited you're here, and now let's get into today's episode.
Kellie Daab is the highly sensitive CEO. After working in the creative industry for her entire career, Kellie couldn't understand why she felt different from other entrepreneurs. Despite running a highly successful education business, speaking on dozens of stages, and winning multiple awards, Kellie still felt something was wrong with her. She set out to determine why she felt overwhelmed and unfulfilled in business and life. That's when she discovered HSP and the traits of a highly sensitive person. Kellie went on a quest to find a new way of living and working. Since then, Kellie has completely reset her business and reclaimed her peace. Now she helps other highly sensitive entrepreneurs to do the same through consulting, education, and slowpreneurship. Today, I'm absolutely super excited to talk to Kellie Daab. She is the CEO of the Highly Sensitive CEO, and we're going to talk about her journey of being a highly sensitive entrepreneur and her journey towards slow entrepreneurship. Kellie, welcome on the Scenic Route podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
So tell us, first and foremost, what is a highly sensitive person, an HSP?
Yeah, so the coin is actually the term actually was coined by psychologist Elaine Aron. It also has a sister term called sensory processing sensitivity. It is a personality trait. It's not a disorder, but basically it has been basically discovered in around 30% of all species, not just humans, all species. Yeah, and so
Wow.
It down to some very four types of words that you would associate with someone who's highly sensitive. They're thinkers, they're feelers, they're knowers, and they're sensors. Okay, so they generally have a higher depth of processing, right? They can overthink that, but they're also that are interested.
Hello, Overthinker Anonymous.
Yeah, they're interested in how something works, or they always feel like they're in their head, right? They process information much more deeper and longer than others, right? So then you have the thinkers and the feelers. The feelers are the people, and this is a personality trait where you're sort of you can feel what's happening, the stimulation and the energy in your environment, right? So you feel what's going on around you, and you can easily become overstimulated or overwhelmed by the environment around you. You are a high feeler. Okay. And then thinkers, feelers, I have to tell myself, knowers, highly intuitive, highly empathic, right? You just know, right? You know that you know, and you don't know how you know, but
like a good rapport with people,
yeah,
I suppose,
exactly.
right?
You're highly empathetic and you're highly intuitive. And then the last is a sensor. So essentially, you're really great at sensing subtleties in your environment. That could be a 1 degree shift in temperature, or it could be the change grimace on someone's face, things like that.
Also picking up on energies and vibes,
correct,
that kind of thing, or is it?
Yep, absolutely. So how it manifests, how your sensitivity or anyone's sensitivity manifests is really dependent on a lot of things, your upbringing and environment, as well as what are your existing coping mechanisms, as well as sort of what are a lot of times it is related to traumas. What are the traumas that you've experienced that have created the ways
kind of shaped it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so then as you've said, we have all these different types, and it shows up it's such a it shows up in different for everyone. How did it show up for you? Yeah, how did it show up for you? When was the moment where you're something is different? What's wrong with me? That's probably where everyone starts. What's wrong with me?
Well, that's exactly it. That's literally the first sentence on my website. What is wrong with me? Because that is the question that I kept asking to myself. But the interesting part is I didn't learn that I was highly sensitive until about 2 years ago, even though the book was originally published in 1996.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I knew from a very young age that I was different. I knew that I didn't fit in my environment. I knew, and actually, which is strange, as I started to sort of unpack all of this and unravel it, I knew that I had always listened to and counted on my intuition. I knew that part I knew. What I didn't fully understand is that these things that I was doing and the way that I was behaving and sort of the life that I had chosen to live was because I was a highly sensitive person. As a matter of fact, I think there's something like 50 to 60% of the creative economy are highly sensitive people. And we create these businesses and we become entrepreneurs because we want this sort of freedom and the ability.
Yeah, we kind of feel like a misfit in the agency sphere or corporate, and like, no, we're not fitting here, so we kind of create our own.
Exactly. And so what we actually see is that people come to understand, and still being a highly sensitive person isn't exactly something you want to put on your business card, right? Like, you don't be like,
I suppose a lot of people are like, oh, what does it mean? Like, is she gonna cry? Like,
right, exactly. But what it actually means is that the environment around me is different. I see it in a different way than you see. I process it in a different way than you process it. I think more, I sense more, I feel more, and I know more than you do. Right. And that just is genetically how my body works. Actually, it's not, it's a serotonin difference in your body.
Okay. So like really like biochemistry, not necessarily genetics.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not a genetic difference, but it is sort of the levels. I am not a scientist. The levels of serotonin in your body and how you actually react, your mirror nerve. So, yeah, but again, not
okay. We gotta leave it at that. Yeah. I sucked at biology. I was like, nope, not for me.
Exactly. So it really is interesting, and how that manifests obviously depends on sort of your own way of experiencing the world. And we see high sensitivity across all cultures, across all species in general. So how does an animal show that they're highly sensitive in comparison to a human? And how does a human from the United States, for example, show that they're highly sensitive in comparison? And what does that mean, right? We know that it means something.
Yeah, I mean, we are the story. Like, I mean, as a sociologist, I'm like, yes. Like the stories that we go through shape us, the communities we're in shape us, like the systems we're in, the structures we're in, like they all shape us, right? So 2 years ago, where like we all know 2 years ago it was like the big C word, we don't want to name it. Yeah. Everything was like going crazy. So where were you? Where was your business at when you found, when you first were like, oh, something's wrong with me?
I actually sort of had started a spiritual deconstruction and journey, right? So I had some things in my life that sort of led me on this more spiritual journey path that were kind of like causing me to really look at things. And I think that I think obviously I intuitively knew that like I was working really, really, really hard. And I was speaking internationally. One year I was like 36 speaking engagements in a year. It was just unreal. Like the amount of time and energy that I had put into this business, and what it was giving me, well, actually more like what it was costing me, was at that point was when I was like, okay, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't really know what was going, like, how do I fix this, right? And the events of 2020 really allowed me an opportunity to stop. Like, and we don't all get that beauty, right? Like, so I see that as a gift, sort of. I mean, I lost 2 family members, so it wasn't a wonderful gift, but I saw the time as a gift for me to just, I happened to work in the event industry, and the event industry was literally,
it was dead
from the inside out. A client called me and said, I just lost $1 million overnight. Like that's what was happening. And so, and I was giving and giving and giving to the point that I had given everything I possibly could. And at this point we had to see what was going to happen. We had just to watch it.
Yeah. Like day by day. Like, I mean, I remember, like, luckily I wasn't that affected. It's not tied to events, but I mean, a lot of my clients and friends are like wedding photographers. Like they had all their business gone overnight, and for God knows how long, right? So it was insane.
And not only that, we're talking about people's jobs are gone, their economic security that they were basing their funds on, gone, everything's gone. And so, and not to mention, this is a whole nother subject for another day, but even the conversations within the community, the greater community, were so divided that you couldn't really, it became something that wasn't really why I was there. I was there to educate, and so what we actually created was this space where there's no real right thing. And I just decided to stop. And in that time, I was doing a lot of reading and I was spending a lot of time on myself. And, I just didn't know what I wanted or how I wanted to move forward. And I couldn't sell. I just did not feel right selling to people whose business just poofed out from underneath them. Fault of their own. And so I just basically sat and read and for the first time I learned how to rest. That was the first time in my life that I knew that it was okay to rest and nothing would blow up, right? And
wow. Okay. Yeah.
Through this process through resting that I found slow living, right? Slow living is a really cool concept that basically helps us to learn how to live more sustainably.
Yeah. Also to appreciate more. It just.
Yes. And slow living was sort of how I was practicing and living life. And then I was walking through a bookstore one day and I saw on the bookshelf, something like the handbook for highly sensitive people or something. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I pulled it down, like you do in any bookstore. I pull it down and I'm just
flipping pages.
Yeah. Just flip through. There's a checklist. And I was standing there in the bookstore and I was like,
through the mental checklist.
check. And it was 2 full pages of a checklist. And I was like, there's only one thing on there that wasn't my issue, which I now know is it was coffee. So highly sensitive people have a lot of trouble with caffeine. But let's be honest. Oh, I probably with alcohol, I have resistance, to coffee at this point. But I had been so long that I've been using coffee. And anyways, all that to say, when you go through and I take all these quizzes, I'm 99% highly sensitive, way. Wow. The scales of empathetic and all these things, stuff I didn't know. But as soon as I knew that information, I started devouring book after book after book of what is going on. And I started studying the science and I started trying to, and there's only a few of us that teach highly sensitive entrepreneurs out there. And at that point, I couldn't find the information I was looking for. Why did my business look the way it did as a result of being a highly sensitive person? And what would a business look like if I built it based on sensitivity? And so that's when I realized that I had to level my business. So I closed everything. I closed my giant online community. I deleted 10,000 subscribers. I deleted 5,000 followers on Instagram. I just leveled it because what I realized is that actually the first thing I did was I polled my clients. So I got on Facebook DM with them. And a lot of them I had stayed in contact with because we were just getting on calls just to say it, how are you? Literally.
Yeah. How you're doing. Yeah. How you're keeping up. How you're holding up.
Going on. And so it wasn't hard to contact these clients. They were all still there. They were all going to continue working with me. It was just this period of
couldn't at this point in time.
Nobody could do. Yeah. It was too chaotic to be working on your business. So essentially I just started saying, I'm like, would you go through this checklist and tell me? And they're like, yeah, I'm 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. And then what I realized is of the 100 clients that I pulled, 80% of them were already highly sensitive. So I was already marketing to highly sensitive entrepreneurs. I just didn't.
Yeah. Absolutely intuitively, without actually. Yeah.
Just because sensitive people are attracted to the message of other sensitive people. That's just how it is. That's probably why I'm here on this podcast today, right? Because the message meant something to you. So it really was very easy to make that transition, but I had to change a lot in my life and let a lot of things go. It was just okay, well, this doesn't even fit anymore. These 100 people, I know they're going to come with me because they already are with me. So it was one of those so I started dubbing it my life reset. We reset the house, we reset the business, we reset everything.
Wow. Like every nook and cranny, you were like, okay, how can I make this? What do I need to edit to suit me and my need?
Exactly. And even down to things like my closet. I literally only wear black, white, and gray. That's it. Because that's what feels comfortable. I was already wearing black primarily, but I had a closet full of things I didn't wear, So
Out with. Yeah, exactly. Why would you keep it on just as a reminder of whatever or baggage that
exactly. And now it's so much easier to get dressed. I buy comfortable things that make me feel good. I don't have to, there's no like, oh, well, what pink is the right? It's like, like, I mean, the only time it doesn't work is Easter Sunday, but we'll figure that out later. But with all
one thing at a time.
And it was not just my business that I reset. Yes, that was a huge part of it. But I reset my boundaries. I reset my like operating procedures. I reset like even down to like the systems that I used to run my business. I was spending upwards of like $500 to $800 a month to run my business. And I was looking at this and saying, is the cost of this worth the energy and time that it takes to maintain these things? And is there a better way, and a way that's less stimulating for me, that doesn't overwhelm me? And I literally like, wow. I mean, I think I my expenses now are something like $60 a month, right? Because I just collapsed everything as much as I possibly could.
Wow. Yeah. Kind of also really bringing in kind of like the slow and simple living, right? Like what is really essential. Yeah, I feel sometimes we kind of get with assistance into things. We kind of also can get shiny object syndrome with those. Like, oh, okay, what kind of like, oh, I see this entrepreneur who has like this and this funnel going on, blah, 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 blah. So I probably need that too. And that subscription is going to cost me $500 a year or something. And it's actually like, well, is it essential for what you want to do and the season you're in, or is it not?
Exactly. And honestly, the more stimulation for highly sensitive people, and that's like everything is stimulation, right? Like every piece of energy and anything that enters your energetic field that intersects with you has a power of impacting you, whether you're sensitive or not, right?
Yeah. How do you handle going online and doing Instagram or like social media in general?
It's really funny. I used to, because my main coping mechanism was dissociation. So like I was a high achiever. So that's, basically what happens a lot of times is they'll swing back and forth on a pendulum. They'll either be like super avoiders where they procrastinate, they don't want to,
super engaged,
or they'll be like high achievers and they'll be super engaged and they'll be pushing it and they'll just avoid the feelings in the center, right? I was a high achiever. So what I would do is I'd push, and I saw momentum. That's the thing. I was good at it. I was raised a pastor's kid. I was in musical theater. I was a performer. I went to college for music. So being online was never the problem. What I didn't weigh was what the cost of that was to me personally and, just energetically. I didn't look at it from that perspective. And then I would just think, oh, I'm just tired, or like, oh, I don't know what's wrong. And like I'd blame it on some thousand other things. But at the end of the day, now I have to be really careful. Now I sort of like removed that. I call it like the turtle shell. My shell's gone. I don't have that like hard disassociated person that sort of,
kind of like that armor as a sort of protective mechanism. So it's kind of like your raw self.
Yeah, this is it. And so I have to be very careful energetically how much I spend time online, how much I look at my phone, and I know when I don't have a healthy balance of that.
How does that show up for you?
It shows up for me like late nights on my phone. Over exhaustion, comparison is a huge one. I feel like I'm not doing enough, or like I need to catch up. That's the over.
Yeah, the feeling of behind.
Yes. And so then I feel like I have to start running, and then I have to remind myself to surrender to the slowpreneurship life and know that, things are coming. And it's a constant swing of like, Kellie, you just need to bring yourself back to balance, which is basically, what I work on. And people understand is there is a place of balance. It doesn't mean that you're not still going to swing, right? You're going to swing, but by the end of the day, or by the end of the moment, you can reset yourself back to that balanced state.
Yeah. What I feel from my journey is you'll always get off center. Like that's just natural. Life happens. Shit gets thrown at you, but you kind of find back to your equilibrium, to your balance faster.
Yeah.
And more effortlessly. I think that's the key, right? Like, whereas a couple of years ago, when something would have thrown me off, I don't know, I would have like sulked and pitied myself and get angry for like a week or two. I don't know. And now I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? Do you want to like sulk a bit around? Fair enough. Okay, I'm giving my sulking time.
Yeah, exactly.
But I kind of know, okay, I'm not doing that. I do that like consciously, not kind of like crapping on myself. And then I'm kind of like, okay,
yeah,
now it's kind of more or less balanced out, and then can continue.
exactly.
It's like done.
And the thing is, when you do that, when you learn those things, or oftentimes it's really just about, and that's where with my clients, I bring in what's called the reset method. And the first step of the reset method is to realize, like, just realize what you're doing. Like, just realize this is a coping mechanism. Or like, this is the lie I'm telling myself, or this is a limiting belief, or this is a trigger. I could even say now that like I use these methods in things like my marriage or with my children. And I might say, you know what? I'm responding to the thing you just did because I'm triggered. I'm still trying to figure out why I'm feeling triggered. Will you give me a few minutes to figure that out? And then I can go and process it. As a highly sensitive person, especially, it just takes us longer to process. I mean, how many times have you said, like, or do you wish you could say, I can't make a decision about that right now. Let me think on that. Like, and then by the time you get to 20 minutes, you're like, oh, there you go. I got it. It's just that we have to process things much more deeply. Now, one of the ways
it's just a different pace. Yeah.
Is like fight or flight, right? So like a lot of people, we talk about fight or flight, but highly sensitive people introduce a new way, freeze, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so we sort of freeze on new ideas, or something happens and we sort of like, you walk into a room and it's overstimulating and your first response is to freeze. You're the kind of person that gets in the shower at the end of the day and thinks of the 10 things you should have said to that person or that customer or whatever. And or 20 years ago, oh man, I should have said blah, blah, blah.
That would be the perfect response to that bullshit I got. Yeah, no, I've never done that. No.
So when we introduce the concept of freeze, though, in business, what actually happens is that we can be high achieving for a long time, but then something smacks into us, and then we're like, and we don't always make the right choice because we either make it too fast or too slow. Okay. Instead of breaking, taking the time that we need and processing it, we make decisions or formulate ideas or move forward with things. Like Kellie, for example, should have known that Kellie cannot do 36 speaking engagements in a year with 3 children. Who does that? Kellie should have known that. Kellie should have understood.
Home. Well, that's the thing with the shoulds, right?
Right.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
And so you don't process because you get excited and you're an overachiever and you push through because you got to cool them. Right?
Yeah, I think that's especially kind of like a dynamic combination. If you're an overachiever and an HSP and you're like, oh, okay, but I want to do this because it feels good. I like doing things and I also get things in return. But at the same time, you're like, I'm burning out. Help. Like, I don't know. It kind of like you see your ship sinking, but you're still like putting more coal in the oven so the ship goes faster.
Right. And ultimately what happens, no matter which way you go, whether you're the avoider or the achiever, ultimately you'll fail regardless. Okay. You will fail regardless. Everything will blow up in your face and your boat will sink regardless of whether you avoid for too long or achieve for too long, because ultimately both of you are afraid of the same thing, and that is the fear of failure. You're afraid to fail, but your actions will make you fail, right? The only way not to quote fail is to find the balance between achieving and avoiding, which is where entrepreneurship comes in, right? Which is where business and what I call the re-way, right? Like the re-way of living. Re as a prefix, so I'm a nerd, etymology.
I like it.
Yeah.
Totally feeling you.
Re as a prefix, right? It means begin again or try again or do it again, right? And so
just get up, try again,
exactly.
fail faster, like whatever you got to do
what if
just to
we
figure it out.
stopped trying to set something and we talked about resetting all the time? We're living a re-way of life where I look at this thing, for example, I do a crafting thing on the side, and today I'm going, this system is not working. Like, it's not okay, Kelly. Okay, don't get mad or upset that like you're failing at the system and be like, I've been pushing, trying to achieve, and now it's failing. Go, okay, what can I do instead? What's another option?
Yeah.
And that keeps me moving forward. I don't have to take moving backwards to avoiding the problem. All I have to do is go, what do I do? Let's try again.
Yeah.
And that completely changes your approach when you look at like business in general. When you say, oh, we're facing a problem, a lot of people will say, well, forget it, jump it, we're done. Or they'll say, we'll put more energy into it and it still won't work.
Yeah, pushing through. That's kind of like the whole pushing through grit mentality that we're getting online a lot. Like, just push through, do it, whatever.
Yep. No, you stop and look at it. Take your freeze for what it is. It's there for a reason. Okay. Highly sensitive people tend to be leaders, consultants, advisors. They generally are your educators, things like that. They exist in society for a reason so that they can consider things more deeply and give you an emotional as well as educational response. That's why we exist, right? So with that said, take your freeze for what it is and say, okay, I need to pause for a second and try something different. Go with the re-way. What is the re-way? I'm going to reset this completely, right? And go recognize it, realize it, reassess it, do all the things you need to do to like look at what's going on. Try again.
When you did that big reset on your business, and as you said, like even to your closet, I still love that one. Like, did you bump into any sort of, let's call it mindset challenges where you're like, ooh, is this like, right? Is this like, nah, should I really, like, did anything show up for you where we were like, was not expecting this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that anytime, okay, so one thing that like a myth we need to bust like right now is that reset doesn't equal rest. Okay, where a lot of people think they're going to go on vacation and reset, right? Or, well, when this is over, then I can reset. But reset doesn't equal rest. Okay.
I love that. Yes, so true.
Start again or begin again, but you can't begin by sitting still, right? It is not the same as rest. Reset requires actions. And anytime you take actions, specifically transformative actions, like tearing down your business, you're going to face mindset roadblocks, period, end of story, right? 8,000 people came at me when I shut down their group. It was my group. I built it, but 8,000 people were mad when I shut it down, right? Because this was their space. So, but nobody cared about me and what I needed.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're kind of like, why you closed it down, your reasoning behind it.
Right. How about answering the question, well, why would you leave this industry? Why wouldn't you just stay and what did we do wrong? And how about learning about educational design and how humans learn as a part of learning about HSP? I'm like, wait a minute. Okay. And then saying my course, the one that I sold, it would never have worked. It worked. The education was good. The way it was presented wasn't. Right. And physically and verbally and publicly saying these things, right? Of course, there were these roadblocks that I was facing and realizing that as I uncovered all of these things that I had to go back and say, you know what, this has to close because this is not going to ever work this way. Right.
Would you mind sharing what was the biggest roadblock for you personally during that reset?
So I don't know if you guys know about Enneagram, right? I'm an Enneagram 5.
I'm a 7. Hello. If you haven't guessed already.
I'm swing to 7 when they're like, you know, in their happiest state, they swing more to the 7 when they feel calm and rested. But as a 5, my biggest desire is to be valuable to someone, right? And so when you have 100 people on your Instagram that you just had 5,000, all of a sudden you no longer feel valuable. When all the speaking engagements that you used to do don't want you anymore because you don't have wedding industry educator under your name, right? Then all of a sudden you no longer feel valuable. When people don't want to talk to you because you're not in the wedding industry anymore, but that doesn't mean you forgot. Like your brain doesn't fall out of your ears, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's the same kind of like mysterium. Like suddenly you got kids and like people are like,
Right.
wait, what? You still know about shit? Like, yeah, like my brain is not like no, brain uterus, two different things.
I still know what I knew. I just am doing it now with a way that will help you balance more. And but with all that said, for me, the loss of value, what was appeared or perceived value, essentially, this person has a lot of followers, this person has a huge list.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of external validation and as well.
And all of a sudden, there was no value. I felt like I wasn't as valuable. And then it was like, is this thing? And so I felt I often had to surrender to this, like, oh, you need to be valuable in order to be worthwhile for someone's time and energy and love and money and blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I deal with that. You will never, if you have major roadblocks, it won't ever be one time.
No. Yeah, that's what I like. Sometimes when I talk to people about the scenic route, or like it kind of comes with that, especially when they're at the beginning of their journey, they're kind of like coming with this notion of like, oh, it's easy for you to say this. You had your 100K year, your 150K year. Like, yes, I did, but shit is still showing up.
Yeah.
It might be different shit, hopefully, because I've done a lot of work, but some really deep traumas and triggers still show up,
right.
But they show up differently. It's not like the work's done, right. Whatever that means, right? Like I hate to break it, but it's kind of like ongoing. It's just on a different level. It shows up differently. It might like come in then with how you're leading a team, or
in life when something new enters your energetic space. Like, for example, my dad passed away. We're almost clearing up COVID and my dad gets COVID and passes away. So like we're, everything blows up, and like you are in this, and all the things that you healed and worked on before are just at a higher level. They feel deeper. They work differently. It's like now I'm at this new place and now I still have to deal with these things, but at a much more intense level. So it doesn't go away. So as people look and they're like, oh, 100K, 10K months, blah, blah, blah. It has absolutely nothing to do with the longevity and really the sustainability of your business long term. Right. And here's the thing. We talk a lot about business success in the entrepreneurial space, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to say something slightly controversial. All right.
Yes. Give it.
I don't care what you sell. Any widget, any service, anything will make money, and anything can make you lots of money, right? I could care less about your widget. I care about you as the entrepreneur. If that is not being worked on more than the widget in your business, then the widget will fail and you will fail. Yes. I would rather that you not fail and let the widget fail, because it has nothing to do with you.
Yes. And I agree. Like, I mean, what my clients are almost exclusively service providers. And almost one of the first thing I have to hammer into them in a very gentle and loving way is like, you are the asset.
Yeah.
Like if you are providing the service, if you're not completely outsource everything, you are the asset. You have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of how good you provide service, how good your branding is, how good your customer experience is. You're the asset.
Right. Because if you fail, your humanness and your mind and body and energy fails, the widget fails, right?
Yes.
If the widget fails separate from you and you thrive, you let it go and go sell a different widget. That's totally fine. And it's only society. Honestly, actually, I've done a little bit of research. It's only socialization, actually. If you look at the that has
Yes.
that has implanted the idea in you that your success of your business has something to do with your own personal success.
Or like self-worth, even.
Completely separate things, or that you have to continue this thing and sell this widget and work on it as hard as you possibly can, duct tape and nails, and not let it go. That's socialization. Okay. That actually is bad business advice from the 50s. It really has nothing to do with today's version of it.
Yeah, when there were just like 5 widgets in the world, and like, yeah, it's so insane that we still cling on to really prehistoric at this time marketing and selling advice, and even like constructing widget designing advice, where that's like, this is not for like, yeah, I agree. Like, it really interesting how they're connected at the same time. Like, yes, you are invested in the widget you're selling, rightly so, and people love that. People like if there's a story and like family-owned business, blah 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 blah, and use that advantage because you're not big corporate, right? That's your strong suit. And at the same time, you need a certain level of detachment to, as you said, you need also to let it go instead of like duct taping the shit out of it.
And the thing is, detachment, okay, I'm a highly sensitive person, so I don't detach from like anything. And when I do detach, right?
How's that working for you?
When I do detach, it's through dissociation. It's not even like I'm detached. It's like I check out. Energetically
entirely
out because I'm overstimulated. So I learned that the word is not necessary, or not even the word, but the emotion or the bridge between these two things isn't actually, detachment, it's surrender.
Oh, I love that.
So it's not really about how do I say this properly? It's not really about detaching from the outcome. It's about surrendering to myself, really. And if you have a higher power, pick a higher power. But it's
if that works for you, whatever, sure.
Surrendering to myself. I've done enough work to get clients. I've done enough work to be valuable. I've done enough work to prove that.
And I mean, even more, sorry to budge in, but you're inherently valuable regardless of the work you do.
Exactly. And the thing is, I have to trust and surrender that there's not more glue out there to fix this thing. I just have to keep doing. It's like, like a plant, right? Gardeners will tell you that they lose more of their crops than they grow, right?
Yeah.
So like, if you look at it from that perspective, it's really just about surrendering and beginning again and surrendering. If let's say money is tight, instead of being like, oh, let's put a sale, which is what I would have done, I'm going to do a promo or blah, blah, blah. So I could continuously generate like income, which is why you get to those 100K, 10K months, because you're constantly pushing.
Yes. So what are you doing instead?
Instead, you just, when you notice it, just start saying, okay, it's time for something to come through. And so as I market, I'm going to be thinking of that. Who am I attracting? What am I doing? What am I saying? How am I going to attract a sale? And then as soon as you need it, not necessarily when you want it, but as soon as you need it, watch it come through. And at no planning of your own, it's going to come through when it's time, and when it's time for you. And that is either whether you believe in manifestation or energy, like putting energy out into the universe, whatever you believe, prayer, whatever it is, knock yourself out. But that's you putting that intention out, taking specific action, right?
Exactly. That's the crucial part, right? Because I feel a lot of people are like, okay, I do manifest, like I journal, I really think about it very hard, and they kind of leave it at that. But it's not really, it's just kind of like your manifestation is more like the intention behind your action.
Right.
right? It's not, the action is not detached from it.
It's about you putting your feet and your hands and your body in places in which you can have what it is you're desiring. So if I want to buy a house on a lake, I can't just sit around and dream for a house on lake if I'm not like applying for a mortgage, right? Like those kinds of things that doesn't randomly just happen. Someone knocks on my door and says, hey, I have this house by the lake, you want it, right? I got to do these things. And so I start taking specific actions to really understand. And sometimes those are completely invisible, which I didn't understand before. I used to think that every action was visible, and it was visible because I was a high achiever, but actually the actions that will manifest most quickly are invisible. Nobody even knows you're doing them. They're in your head, they're in your heart, they're on all these random sheets of paper. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to.
And the most important thing here is also like your non-action is also an action that speaks.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right? Like if you're avoiding something, if you're pushing something away, it's kind of like, oh, okay, maybe there's something there too. So let's wait and put that aside, because what you're avoiding, your non-action, is also telling something.
Exactly. And I really think that like when we talk about how do we come to the balance place, for me, I know that balance in my life is slow and balance in my business is slow. So I don't have 10K months anymore, but I don't need them because it's always like this. So instead of having these peaks and valleys, which is what they talk about in business, it's more like this. It's like, and I'm spending less and I'm doing less. And so it's more like I'm just constantly, and when I have spikes of, I'm like, ooh, I got to get back to my patterns. I got to get back to my way of living. Something has to change, because these spikes tell me, okay, I got to change, this, I got to reset.
Yeah. Kind of like the focus is different, right? Like, I mean, it's designed to work for you and your needs. And like, and if those needs aren't like the 100K spikes, that's completely fine. And I love that what you've said about your expenses, right? Because in the online business world, we hear so much about revenue or like sales, like recurring revenue or recurring sales and stuff. And it's like, that is brilliant. But if you have like 100K revenue and expenses of 90K, I don't really give a shit about your 100K revenue. Like, I'm more interested in, ooh, that's interesting. So what's your profitability rate?
Exactly.
Right? Like, what does it cost you to run your business? If it's like, as you've said, $60 a month, that's pretty cool. Like,
and what does it cost you energetically to run a business? And that really is the question I had to ask myself, is it, what was that costing me energetically? And at that rate, when I realized that I was taking out more than I was putting in, was when I realized I don't have a savings account for energy, which is why, I was like not as energetically available for my kids and not as energetically available in my marriage and in my families and in my volunteer organizations and all these things. I was doing them, but then I would come home completely depleted because I hadn't saved energy for them. And so I think really what we're talking about and the thing I think that most people get caught up in when they're looking at it, especially highly sensitive people, is we don't know where, like, how do you even start? Like, where do you start? Because I tell the story of leveling my business, completely resetting, like, and my whole house painted. Literally almost every wall in this house has been painted. We have like 2 rooms left to go. So like, we talk about that, they're like, whoa, that seems so big. But resetting and, resetting even small things in your life and business can be as simple as 5 minutes. I'm writing an email and I'm ready to blow up at this customer who's driving me nuts. I can take 5 seconds and like just breathe and think the freeze. Right? Yeah. But it could be also a day. I'm going to spend an entire day going through this massive to-do list, sorting it and looking at my business again and setting it up to be more balanced. Okay. I'm going to make decisions about what needs to change. That's a reset too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Closing a single program is a big reset, right? You don't have to close everything like I did.
Right, cleaning out your fridge is also a reset. Like,
agree, absolutely. Anything, clean off your desk before you get started.
Yeah, that's a good example with the desk, though, and I think it also highlights, like, even if you reset once, it's not done.
No.
You will need to reset again. Like, I mean, you know this, right? Like your desk here, it's all like Instagram worthy, all cleaned up. You're like, woohoo. And then at the end of the day, it's like a battlefield.
Exactly.
And you're like, okay, resetting again.
Yeah.
So getting also comfortable with that, like, it's kind of like an ongoing process. It's not said and done. It's just set and forget. It's really like, oh, okay. And I feel that's always the big thing with, like, oh, it's so like, who reset, burning down business, reset, like, ooh. We all see this so black and white, right? It's like, oh, if I don't have a week to redo my entire house, it's not, but instead,
I don't have enough things in order to do this thing, or I don't have enough of that to do, or enough money, or enough. And guess what? Cleaning my closet didn't have anything to do with money. I didn't spend a single cent to clean out my closet, right? Like, so when we talk about these things, the real issue when we talk about resets or changing your life to match your sensitivities or to match your needs, even if you're not a highly sensitive person, you still have needs that in your business. The first thing that you want to do is just draw awareness. I ask myself 2 questions. What's not working? What is working? And then I always add why, right? What's working? What's not working? Why? Right? It literally is that simple. And I know that, like, you know, lots of people are going to give you whole booklets on, you know, course guides. And I'm just literally asking you to ask yourself two simple questions. What's not working, and what is working, and why? And when you start there and just start making a list, I don't care how you make the list, and, you know, on a journal, in a computer,
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You'll be able to really clearly see. I asked myself,
I love that,
very quickly, what about this business is not working? I heard it described like this. Sometimes we're in the flame and sometimes we're in the wax. And the wax doesn't move. It's like, you know, like, and it gets hard, right? And the flame is constantly moving and it's on fire. And so I had to look and say, what is wax here? And that was when the few things that I love doing, I took with me. And I said, I do like doing these things and I'm going to keep doing.
Going to continue.
And these things are wax and they're going to go. And so we have to look at, like, what's working, what's not working, and why.
I love that. Right? That's so powerful.
Very, very simple.
Agreed. Yeah, that's always thing. We always try to make it more complicated, but it isn't, right? Like, what I kind of like, how I also approach it, and that's kind of like, maybe it's more, it's not as simple, but it's also quite a nice question. Like, I go through, like, my house and be like, what am I tolerating?
It's a good question,
right? Exactly, because then you're like, holy crap, like, why am I tolerating? Like, sometimes some things, like, I mean, I would always get bugged because we have, like, only one charger for our phones. And I don't know, I would never know where my partner would put it. And we're like, oh, why am I tolerating this? Like, these $30, what the fuck? Just gotta get another charger. Or, like, that cabinet door that's, like, not shutting properly. Why am I tolerating this? Just get it fixed.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's also a good thing to, like, really see some things where, like, why am I tolerating feeling crappy in my business? Like, why am I tolerating feeling shitty when I post online? Whatever it is. I think those are really, really, really great questions to start.
Yeah. And the thing is, every reset has a positive result. You can't, it's like 100% guarantee, right? Because if you take 5 seconds and change something to something that you want, it works magically, right? There is no, the only way that a reset doesn't work is if you don't actually know what you want, or don't actually know what you need. And that's why awareness is such a huge piece of this. If you're disconnected or associated with self and what you need and what you want, you might need to do some work there first, or in conjunction with your reset. You do self-development in conjunction with this development. But by the time I got
yes, agreed.
I knew myself and I knew what I wanted and needed. And so when I looked at my structure, I was like, oh, well, duh. This, I know why it's not working. I can see it.
Yeah, or just, yeah, like either you have some mindset work, or what you also could try is start smaller.
Yeah.
Don't start with your business.
Yeah.
Like maybe start with your fridge, or start with your wardrobe, or start with the pens you're using.
Yeah.
Right. And like a muscle, build it up until you're like, what's not working with my business? What's not working with my health, with my life? The big ones.
Exactly. And you know what's cool is every time you take little resets, these little steps that will change your life, you're like, oh, I can do this. And then you take on a bigger challenge and a bigger and bigger challenge.
Yes.
And then you're willing to do things like knock a business down because you've done all of these other things to get you to the point and you've seen the results.
Yeah. And you have a lived experience of knowing,
yes,
hey, I'll be okay if I try something new.
Exactly. And the crazy part too for me is that when we look at people that have sort of like their reset averse, it's usually because they have the wrong idea of what reset means. They set these expectations for themselves of like this, like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and look like Barbie and, my chest is going to be up to here and I'm going to have a mini dress on while I run 6 miles and take care of my toddler. And my business is going to make $10,000 in a day. And they have this like vision of what this is supposed to look like. But true reset happens with your messy bun and no bra and at the kitchen sink. Or crawling under your kitchen counters to declutter.
Yeah, it's not like exactly like you've said, like it's not going on a vacation and like taking a pause from your life, but it's actually happening within your life while you're living it.
Right. And you're not going to wake up tomorrow and be something different than who you are. You're going to work with what you have. And one small thing all the way to some big things, you're just going to reset them. You're just going to live in the re-way of life. And
I love that.
I don't really like the way that looks. I'm going to change that. Or I don't like, and it's only society. You need to understand society and socialization is what makes you think that changing something is bad. Okay? Yeah. That's the hustle culture, and you need to deconstruct it and need to tell them, nope, you're wrong. I'm just going to change it because I don't like it anymore and I think I can do it.
I don't like a piece of that. I'm going to like get in new information and let new action follow and off you go.
Exactly.
I love that. So powerful.
We just have a really bad way of looking at the way that we need to thrive has all these goals and expectations that are clouded by what society wants of us.
But that's like a whole different podcast. I feel like we could like on like society's expectations and how to be like screw them. Like that could feel like an entire podcast.
Absolutely. Yep.
Hey, listen, Kellie, it was so interesting talking to you, and I feel like we've covered like some really great points, like so valuable, whether you're highly sensitive or not, that go for every business. So I always kind of like to ask the last question, which is kind of like, because I'm so curious, mostly for mine, because I'm curious now, it's kind of like, what book are you currently reading?
Oh, currently I'm reading Braiding Sweetgrass. It's a
it's a gem. Yes. It's a gem.
I'm about 3/4 of the way through. It's really I mean, so many like wonderful little nuggets of, and I just makes me want to go lay in the grass and rub my trees and thank
yes. I was the same. I was like, I have to read this in the forest under a pine tree.
Yes,
I love it. Hey, Kellie, so to wrap up, how can people find you online? How can people connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is a great place. It's kelliedaab.com. And you can find me by my name online as well. Instagram is where I spend a lot of time, but literally everything is rolled into our website. And a great place for you to start if you're looking to start your own reset process or you're interested in just learning more about reset. I found everything I ever did in my reset process, all the tools, all the quizzes I took, all the exercises I did, I have them into a place called the Rehab Lab. So
Wow.
You can start
an entire library of like
Yes.
your reset.
And all you
tools
have
and
to do is
processes.
log in, and it's on my website, kelliedaab.com/rehab lab. And every tool I ever used is totally free right there inside of the rehab.
Is the quiz in there too that you can actually define if you're highly sensitive or not?
Yes, it is. There's a quiz in there.
Perfect.
And there's a quiz for you to understand if you're a highly sensitive entrepreneur online as well. So everything is in there. And that was
I love
my
that.
journey in a page. So go and grab it, and
Yeah.
it'll help you get started at least.
Yeah, if you've ever during this conversation had like the little nudge of like, oh, this does sound an awfully lot like me, like, yeah, check out Kellie's rehab lab, like highly sensitivity bot almost. Like it sounds amazing and like a brilliant place to start. So yeah, absolutely go have a look. Again, thank you, Kellie, so much for joining me on the Scenic Route podcast.
Thank you.
And walk a bit of this journey with me. It was a blast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Scenic Route podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode and that you can take something from it that feels right to you. I'd be so grateful if you could share the Scenic Route podcast and leave a rating and review so we can introduce more people to the joy of taking the scenic route in business. As always, you can head over to scenicroutepodcast.com to check out all the links and resources from today's episode. Oh, and while you're there, don't forget to download my free email course, Intuitive Branding Invitation, to teach you how you can successfully tune into your own brand frequency and rediscover your brand's unique gifts, strengths, and talents. So thanks again. Talk soon.